Welcome to the Oracle Scroll. This is a new year, a new decade, and a new beginning. We have a new look and a new sound. So we appreciate you joining us today. I'm Kevin Walder, your host, and I will be joined by guests along the way as we assemble information on how we can make this our best life, how we can create the world we live in. Welcome to the Oracle Scroll, Chapter 2. Today we have as our guest Liz, or Elizabeth Muschett, and she is going to talk to us about the Vernal Equinox, which happens tomorrow. It's a couple days earlier than usual, so this is an interesting time. So that early spring showed up. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Elizabeth and let her share with you her view from an astrological, a numerological, and even a tarot standpoint. So it's all yours, Liz. Go for it.
Well, thanks, Kevin, and I'm glad everybody is here tonight to share in this. And I'm going to start sharing my screen so you can see the PowerPoint that I did. And okay, now how do I move this? Because I have to get to where I can do it. Okay, there we go. So welcome to Spring Equinox and Astrological New Year. It's tomorrow, and so I just put on there a little bit about me with the first slide. And then I want to do a little promo that Saturday at 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'll be on KKNW 1150 AM. I'm part of the Moonbeam team now. So once a month I'm on the radio talking about the moons for that particular season, and she does seasons as that month. So it'll be Aries, the theme. And I wanted to start out with the year for 2020. We started out as a universal 4 number. You're going to see how some of these patterns are going to repeat over time here. And 4s are about hard work, both mental and physically, and some self-discipline and, sticking to your course. If you form a friendship this year, most likely it'll be a long-lasting friendship. So perhaps people that find the Oracle Scroll will be, strong friends for a long time. And then I like the universal meaning of the number 4, or the 4 elements of air, earth, air, and water, the 4 seasons and the 4 points of the compass, and the 4 directions of the winds. And also 2020's tarot card would be the Emperor. And it's also the Aries Ingress card. And the Aries Ingress card, Aries Ingress is the sun coming into Aries. So the card for spring equinox is the Emperor. So we're getting the tarot card repeating, we're getting the yearly number repeating. The Emperor is a 4th card in the major arcana. 2020 is a number 4. And the Emperor, to me, just a few key words, is about stability, security, self-control, and rules. And we're really being rocked and rolled on that with this virus going on. So, but I'll come back to the security and stability a little later with the Pluto return of the United States. So spring equinox is tomorrow at 8:50 p.m. here in Seattle. It's 8:49 if you're closer to the equinox. This is the earliest date in 124 years that we've had the spring equinox, and that's due to the daylight savings time was moved up a few years back, and we have a leap year. Those were 2 of the factors that were instrumental in that.
Mhm.
So I'm going to go to the next slide of the astrological chart. And at the ascendant or rising sign, which is at 9 o'clock, and this chart is for Seattle. A lot of astrologers will do Washington, D.C., but we don't live in Washington, D.C., so I like to do more of our local area. So the ascendant is Libra, and Libra is about balance. Its ruler is Venus, and Venus is over here in the 7th house in Taurus. Venus's natural sign is Taurus, and Taurus rules values, gardening, and our money. And it's in the 7th house of relationships. Then we have the sun that has ingressed into Aries. It's also called the Aries point in the 6th house of health. So we're dealing with an issue of health that is happening right now. It's also work and our day-to-day duties and obligations. So, our day-to-day lives, many of us have had many adjustments that we've been making up to this point. And then the moon is in the 4th house in Aquarius. And the moon's Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which Uranus is in the 7th house of relationships. And Uranus is about changes. And then the moon is ruled by Cancer. So we go up to the 9th house of, and I'm going to call this is typically called foreign lands, but I'm going to call it the world tonight. So the North Node, and the North Node is about where we're headed and what we're doing. So Cancer is about our security and safety. And the world, it's like, I would say that we're finding new ways of finding safety and security. And as most people have heard, we have a lot of energy in Capricorn, and that's here in this 4th house. And we have Mars, Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn in the 4th house. And 4th house is about home, our foundation, our security. Capricorn is about government, the rules, the regulations. So it's like there's this big challenge with that going on right now. The phase of the moon right now is in balsamic. So we're at the ending of finishing up a lot of things. And I want to go back to Pluto, because Pluto's a couple of years away from the Pluto return of when the United States was formed. And if we think back historically to what was going on, we succeeded from England, and there was wars and disruption happening. And so sometimes when we come back to a return of a planet returning, we want to start a new cycle. So in some ways, it's kind of interesting that we're having this virus in the United States and the whole world happening. So that's also affecting the whole world, not just the United States. And if we go back on January 12th, we had Saturn and Pluto conjunct in the sky. And if we go back 38 years, when the last time Pluto and Saturn conjunct, we basically had AIDS epidemic going on. So there's like usually some kind of issue, even though not necessarily do Saturn and Pluto relate to health, but it seems like there's been health things going on. The last time that Saturn and Pluto were together in the sky was like 500 years ago. So, these are major cycles. And this year we have a lot of planets starting new cycles. So it's not often that we, in 1 year period, that we have so many, like Saturn returns to Capricorn every 29 years, 28 to 29 years. Pluto and Saturn conjunct every 32 to 38 years, because Pluto has a different orbit. Then we're going to have Jupiter conjunct Pluto, that, you know, and those are cycles that don't just happen all the time. I think Jupiter Pluto's every 13 years, if I remember correctly. So there's all these cycles that were kind of like hitting a reset button this year. So it's like a lot of major change, I feel. So I want to go back to, okay, the ascendant here in Libra, and its ruler is Venus. Venus in the tarot is the Empress, and that rules our values. And Venus is in the 7th house of relationships. So house and relationships and values are a highlight. The sun in the 6th house rules Mars in this 4th house. And it's in Capricorn, so health, work, service, and duty is reflected back to Mars in the Capricorn energy. And Mars is it's a pushing energy. So it's, you know, it can be passion, it can be war, but it's like a pushing energy. So it's like pushing us to make the necessary reforms and changes that are needed. And the moon, which is our emotional nature, is in Aquarius, and lots of times our emotions would be different in Aquarius. But I also want to say that the moon it does represent our mother, but it could represent Mother Earth. And so, you know, it's like kind of a, you know, make change or not. It's like really interesting how pollution levels are, you know, just really gone down, and how there's the air quality is so much better. And then the virus is attacking people's lungs. So there's like this correlation between Earth and people of how it's working together. And then I want to go to the north node of the moon. The nodes of the moon are a mathematical calculation. So it's not like you can look up in the sky and go, see, can you see the north node up there? It's not something that you can look up in the sky and see, but it's a mathematical calculation. And that's how we know when we're going to have eclipses, when the nodes are closer to the full or new moon. I think they have to be within like 12 or 13 degrees to have an eclipse. So, you know, the North Node is up here in the 9th house of foreign lands, and it's in Cancer of our safety and security. And on Christmas, we had a solar eclipse with the sun and moon at 4 degrees of Capricorn. So it would have been opposite. So the sun and moon were here where the south node is, but you want to look at the polarity point, the opposite point, because that lots of times gives you a lot of information. So it's looking at, again, what is safety and security to us? I think we're all going to really shift in big ways of what that is. Because in a way, there's like, things aren't going to be the same. It's going to be different. We're all going to be different from this experience. You know, every experience we have makes us new and different, but this one's pretty intense. People are, you know, not being able to walk out and around freely. They're not able to go to a football game or a basketball game, or, you know, children are staying at home. So it's like, you know, it's interesting. We have all these planets in the 4th house of home. We're all being asked to stay home as much as possible. So it's like it kind of echoes and repeats these themes. We are at the midpoint between the eclipses that we had on Christmas Day and let's see, January 10th. So we're kind of at the midpoint, and then the next eclipse will be June 5th. And that eclipse will be in Gemini or Sagittarius, excuse me. So like that energy is going to shift. So we're working towards that. And sometimes you can feel the eclipses before they happen. And oftentimes we feel them for quite a long time afterwards. So, and Sagittarius would rule the ninth house. So it's like a shift and changing of how the world does things. I think it was last week, there was something about that, and I don't know if it was just in our state or if it was in the whole United States. They were trying to pass a bill that in 10 years, I think it was about 10 years, that they could no longer sell gasoline cars. That would be against law. Well, the bill didn't pass, but I'm like, wow, that was pretty interesting. Where did that bill come from? And what are we going to use in 10 years? We have, some electric cars and different things, but it doesn't seem like we have that many. And in 10 years, that's a pretty rapid change, but hey, anything's possible. So if anybody has a question, you can like raise your hand or type it, or I can continue on and we'll do questions later. But if you have a question, I'm okay with people stopping and we address the questions. And there's a whole lot of other signs and planets here, but that was kind of what was highlighted and jumping out at me to talk about. So I talked about the eclipses, and eclipses happen about every 6 months. They come in a pair. There's at least two, but sometimes there's three, because in June we'll have 2 in June and 1 in July. So that's an eclipse pair of 3. And an eclipse together is a lunar and a solar, or solar, lunar, solar, or a lunar, solar, lunar. So there's different possibilities for an eclipse. And we had an eclipse on Christmas Day, and then we had one on January 10th. And then the summer eclipses are June 5th, which is a lunar eclipse. June 20th is a solar eclipse. And July 4th, interesting enough, on the United States birthday, we have a lunar eclipse. And the June 5th one will be in Sagittarius, and the June 20th will be at Cancer, and then the July 4th will be Capricorn. And then to finish out the year, we have a lunar eclipse on November 30th and one on December 14th. And that's when I believe they'll start being in Gemini and Sagittarius, because the eclipses are always, the opposite signs are work together with the eclipses. So here's where I want to bring in the numerology piece. March is a universal number of 7. And I think I wrote this in January, which I didn't really realize what I was writing, but it talks about feeling isolated and disconnected from the world. And how true has that been? For us that are, you could say introverts, but we're not necessarily 100% introvert. That's pretty easy energy. We're used to working from home. We're used to maybe, not going out all the time. But people that are extroverts and like to go to events, that's a little hard. So in April, we go to an 8 number. So it's like we will be challenged, or can be challenged, to demonstrate our abilities to maintain. So that looks like we'll probably be working at maintaining, because if people don't have a paycheck or money coming in, how's that going to work? I saw today that nobody can, there's no evictions that can happen for the next 30 days. So that's one way. And we know that the taxes have been diverted 90 days. Well, and I would assume that there'll be more things that will be the dates more flexible on with that. But eights also bring us rewards and recognition and opportunities. So I would say from this experience, a lot of us are going to gain a lot of recognition and new opportunities. May is a 9 number, and it's about cherishing the moment and learning to let go. The completion or ending of a project or projects, forgiveness of self and others. So I would, just on the numerology, I would say things are like wrapping up. They're like, maybe the virus is under control, or maybe we're like over the top, you know, like I would say for sure by May, it looks that way. Because when we get to June, we start a number 1 month. And so this affords us insight into leadership, self-reliance, creativity, and decision making. We begin the cycle again with new projects and ideas. We can be impatient to take, you know, to get moving again, to like start something new. I'm going to come back to this slide. So the tarot card for the winter solstice or Capricorn Ingress is the Devil. It's associated with the sign Capricorn, the 15th major arcana card of the tarot. It's winter solstice, and Capricorn's about rules, regulations, government, fear, and restrictions. And then the card for Saturn is the World. It's associated with Saturn, the 21st card of the major arcana. Ending of a cycle and a new cycle begins. Unlimited new potential. The midpoints of the 4 seasons are represented in this card. So the bull represents the middle of Taurus. The lion is Leo. The eagle is Scorpio, and the man is Aquarius. So that's usually like May 4th or 5th. It'd be August 4th or 5th. And Scorpio would be, I don't know, but anyway, it's the 4th or 5th of the month for those ones. Then the card associated with Pluto is Judgment. It's the 20th card of the major arcana. Emerging from the underworld. Pluto, you know, takes us down to our core. It helps us to work through our issues. It helps to work through what's being hidden, you know, to bring it to the surface. It's associated with Gabrielle. And the horn blowing to me when I worked on this was really calling to me of, we're being called to a higher consciousness. So to me, I don't know why, when I look at this card, not always has that horn been such a prominent thing, but when I was working on this presentation, the horn seems super important. Mars is associated with the tarot card of the Tower, the 16th card. It's crisis, sudden, unexpected change, renovation, and illness. And boy, has this virus been shaking things up. And not just for Seattle, the whole world, but it's kind of interesting that Seattle was the first area that they knew that the virus hit. The spring equinox has a Libra rising, and Libra's ruler is Venus. So this picture isn't very good. I had a hard time finding a picture for Venus being born out of the foam of the sea. She rules the 7th house of relationships and also the 2nd house of our values and money. she's the third major arcana card, the Empress. And new creation, new business. And I like the part about the gardening, because it's like on Facebook, I'm seeing a lot of people cleaning out their garden spaces. You know, one lady, I guess you can go to the hardware stores and different stores and you can just order your stuff ahead of time and call them or tell them about what time you're going to be there, and they'll bring it out to your car, your product, so you don't even have to get out of your car. So that's really nice. Okay, the moon is in Aquarius, and the Aquarius card is the star. And the moon rules the sign Cancer. And Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Okay. Whoops. Why is it going the wrong way? Because earlier I could get this to, oh, here, I got to go here and go back. Okay. Uranus's card is the Fool. So to me, that means we have, it's like time to have a lot of faith and trust. And sometimes that's difficult, but we're all working on that to the best of our abilities. So I'm going to go back a few to that one slide. So I thought it was really interesting that we have from the 15th to the 21st major arcana card, the Devil, the Tower, the Star, the Sun, the Moon, the Judgment, and the World, all prominent in the Spring Equinox astrology chart. It's the last 7 major arcana cards, and the first 7 is the first cycle, the second 7 is the second cycle, and this would be the third cycle in the major arcana card. So we're at that end cycle. So to me, that's even another indication that we're working on improving things and finishing things up. And then I don't know if everybody knows their personal number for 2020, but using the table 3 from Gateways to Change, Keys to Navigating the Seas of Life, using numerology and astrology on page 11, with a book that I co-authored with Gloria, and Gloria is on here tonight. There's no math involved. All you need is your birth month and day. So here's a chart this is that chart out of our book. And at the top, you would find your month. And on the left, you'd find the day. And then you'd take the 2 lines and go together to find your birth, your number for the year of what number you're working under. And here's a copy of our book that's available on Amazon. And I spelled Amazon wrong, I see. And also I have copies for sale, and Gloria has copies for sale also. And if you want to get a hold of me, my website is alightpath.com. You can email me, and or you can call me, or you can find me on Facebook. Or if you're listening to this and you forget all that, I'm sure if you sent Kevin a message, he'd tell you how to get a hold of me. And then I'm doing a special running through April 30th for 22% off consultations. And all you have to do is mention that you were here today listening. So that's what I have. And if you have any questions, we can open it up to questions now.
Okay, the star card, Gloria posted that the star card is also the sign of hope, which, yeah, that definitely is very hopeful card.
Yes,
so
yes.
That's a good card to show up in any reading. So, all right. So it's open to questions now. Has anyone got anything that they didn't quite understand or would like a little more information?
And also, if you don't know what number year you're in, I can give that too if somebody wants to know.
And I do on the replay that will be posted on YouTube. I always list in the notes that are under the video the contact information, so you'll get direct links to Liz and her website, and everybody else that, all the information that she's given us here. So you'll be able to follow up with that. So anybody, yeah, if there's anybody wants to comment, Sophie, anything? Nope. I always look to Sophie because she's a good, she keeps everything moving sometimes, so that's helpful. All right, Grace, I see you showed up for Liz. Thank you. That's very nice. And yes, it's I found it very interesting what you said there. You had actually prepared some of your information back in January before we knew any of this, and yet you had that insight that we were going to be restricted in some way and we were going to have some obstacles. So that's always interesting to me when we get the insight and we don't quite know what to make of it until we have it happen.
Well, and I had no idea it would be as intense as it is. I just kind of assumed that maybe people would still be kind of, not getting out as much. They might start to get out, from winter. I always think of as kind of like, we don't have as much light. We're not getting out and doing as many things. And I kind of felt like after that, people would, like April, people would be really wanting to get out and about. Well, it's interesting how different things happen that it changes all that.
Right. Now, can you tell the people how?
I think Sophie wants to say something.
Oh, okay.
Unmute her.
Hang on. Let me do that.
He's going to unmute you, so hold on.
There we go. Go ahead, Sophie.
Okay, now I just noticed that there's a lot of major planets in the fourth house on your chart. And I'm not real clear about the meaning of that or how it affects us.
Well, to me, it's like I think to me, the fourth house is foundation. It's an emotional house. It's our house of safety and security. So I think that's really being challenged at this point.
Okay.
If this wasn't going on, I might look at it in a little different way. But since I know that there's a virus going on and we're kind of being, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is also in that fourth house. So Saturn is restrictions. But Mars is trying to kick open those restrictions. But when Mars and Saturn are so close together, and they will be in a conjunction here pretty soon, it's like having the gas and the brakes on going full speed, and our wheels are just spinning, and we're making a lot of steam or smoke or dust. So I think we're, for a little bit kind of hunkered down. So.
Well, when I looked at that, that's what it felt like. That's what, just like, oh, wow, that's a lot going on right there in that one house.
Right. And since I cast it for Seattle, it even gives us more of that feel, which, that's where the virus started. So even how much more appropriate to do it that way. If I lived on the East Coast, I might do Washington, D.C. But since we live on the West Coast, I like to do it for us.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So thank you for your question. That was a great question.
Well, and it shows how much we are tied to the stars. It really does. I mean, it gives what an influence they have over so much of our behavior and just the way things go, especially on the world stage. It's and with everything keeps rotating back to the virus. I'm sorry that's happened, but that's the way it is. But when we hear the people talking about Europe and Italy and Spain are saying that they're 2 weeks ahead of us. Okay, so the worst has yet to hit us because they are that much ahead of where we are, and that's sobering. It's bad enough. We don't.
Yes.
So it is sobering. Now I'm gonna tell a little story out of school here because it's something I know about. My daughter manages her husband's medical practice in Texas, and we were talking about what was going on, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, you guys are in the middle of all." Well, she told me, and I don't know if she intended to, but they got direction. And it was from one of the health departments. I don't know if it came directly from the state or if it was more of a local thing, but the direction that they were given as a physician's office, if someone shows up at the office displaying all the symptoms and would ask for a test, they have to refer them to the local health department and the CDC. They are not allowed to administer the test in the doctor's office.
Wow.
Now that sounds basically trying to keep the numbers low.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we are where we are, because we've tried so hard to cover it up for so long, or some people, and not us, but some people, to the point where we're in trouble now. So yeah, it's and I think you're right. I think this whole thing has turned our world pretty much upside down. I don't think anything's going to be the same. I don't think employment is going to be the same. I don't think there's not going to be anything that's going to be the same.
Can you unmute Todd? He has a question.
Okay. There we go.
Go, Todd. Oh, it didn't. It started to unmute him, but
There we go.
Hey, you have questions in chat you need to be looking at.
Okay.
And comments.
Okay, Sophie. Let's see.
So, Gracie Star says, I have been getting new thoughts on lots of changes. Are others receiving those? Oh yeah, I don't feel like anything's ever going to be the same. It's going to be a lot of new ways. I think intuitively, like how people aren't commuting. Well, the people that can work from home, I think places will have them work from home a few days a week in the future, or more people will start to work from home. Because the traffic and the pollution. And then Gloria says, 22 is a master number and it covers events worldwide or global in numerology. So that's from Gloria. Pluto rules viruses in astrology. Yes.
Okay.
And Neptune has a correlation also. So.
Okay. Now, I was going to ask you, you mentioned there's no math involved when you use the chart on the book, but it's really simple to get your year number, right? Your current year number.
I can do it right. Because I'll show you. I have this chart.
Okay.
Which I did on the screen, but it didn't come out very good. But somebody wants to know what their number for the year is if they don't know, or they want to make sure that they did it right. So
okay,
it was like, the months were along the top and the day along the side. And in the book, we did it so you can use the charts up to year 2100. So, that's a really good thing because they repeat. So we just had to have 9 charts and they can keep repeating. And somebody could figure out the years and keep adding the numbers, and it could be indefinitely used forever.
Right. Perpetual calendar. So now what I was referring to though is how to add it up in your head so that you get it. And basically it's just your birthday and month
plus the yearly number.
And plus the yearly number. So like mine is I'm 10/18, so that makes me, let's see.
So you do 1.
That makes me a 1.
Be a 9 plus 1 would be 10, so it'd be a 1.
And I'm a plus 4 would be a 5.
Yes.
Okay, so that's how we arrive at that number. So in case you don't have the book with you,
right.
you can still figure it out.
So it's so easy to do it this way.
Oh yeah, definitely. So now and I am told when I look at a chart, I get lost immediately. I have no idea where I am, but I like what Sophie was saying about having everything clustered in one area. To me, because that's the way my natal chart is. I'm clustered in one area. I'm all up here in the left side. I don't have any air, and I don't have any earth, and I have all air. I have no water, no earth.
And right now we don't have any air or fire in the chart, we have earth and water. So now, well, we had Aries, the sun went into, tomorrow goes into fire. So I think that would really help, you know, to burn out the virus.
Okay.
So, that's what I'm thinking. But it's really interesting. Like my children live in Puerto Rico, and last week they got one case, and 4 days later they were all on lockdown to stay at home. They're not messing around.
Right.
So, and like the grocery stores, they were open till 9, but now it's 5 o'clock. They just changed that today. So it's really interesting how different places take this serious or not serious.
Right.
And, you know, being at home, it's like as much as you can work on being as strong as you can, whether that's to do a meditation, to go outside and breathe 5 deep breaths, drink plenty of fluids. I mean, there's little things we can do. So,
and wash your hands until they get all crackly.
Yep. Yeah, because my niece was complaining about that, and it's like, use the lotion.
I had somebody post the other day and said, if your hands aren't crusty around the knuckles, you need to go back and wash your hands. So
Exactly.
And it is, I mean, what we're hearing and what we know is that it is basically simple information, simple protections that we probably should take anyway. I mean, even in just a regular flu and cold season, we should probably be doing those same precautions. But this is a lot more serious. So,
right. And we're kind of taught when we don't feel good, suck it up and go to work unless you can't get out of bed. Well, that's not good. We need to not go. We need to stay home when we don't feel good.
Right.
But
well, that's
where, not acceptable.
That's where a lot, and in fact, I just saw today an article that said that a lot of the outbreak that happened in Kirkland was because they had staff that were working sick, and they just they can't afford to stay home, and that's okay.
And they don't give you enough sick leave if you really need it. And, you know, you have to go to the doctor and get notes. And I mean, it's, you know, it's a pretty complex issue, which, you know, maybe in the future we'll get it a little bit more simplified, that people will have more time to take off, or maybe they'll loosen those restrictions perhaps.
But yeah, go ahead.
Well, the last, for 2001, when we had 9/11, Saturn and Pluto were opposite each other in the sky. And we had all these restrictions on things that you can take on an airplane, etc. Well, the other day they're starting to loosen some of those restrictions. You can take 8 or 12 ounces of hand sanitizer, and it's like, on a plane trip, why would you need that much? But it's like, okay, that sounds good, but that's you know, they're loosening up some restrictions that were made after 9/11.
Right.
So.
Well, and the thing is, yeah, you might need that much hand sanitizer because all those surfaces have been touched by how many other people, and that's the scary part. We have to make sure we protect ourselves from everybody else, including our own families. We can't even let them 6 feet away.
Well, I know most of my dad's doctor's appointments have all been canceled. They're not making new ones, or just like, call back, you know, when this is over, and we'll make new ones.
Right. Well, I know my daughter's office, they are, in fact, they just implemented these rules, and it was Medicare sent them direction that they can actually see people on Skype or FaceTime. They can actually see people at home without having them come to the office if they are displaying symptoms. So that's helpful.
That'll stick for the future, because then not so many people would be having to go into offices if they could do that video chats.
Sure.
It was with a nurse. I mean, that would be a lot more helpful.
Let's see if I could figure out how to get a blood draw without having to go in. That would be wonderful. But still going. So
I have a question.
Okay.
We saw the chart for Seattle. The thought occurred to me, does anyone, or can it be done, a chart for the world itself?
Mm.
I wouldn't know how to do that, but that's
Yeah.
food for thought, and I'll look into
Yeah, because that would be interesting to see what it's going on with all this, everything is going on right now. And I would think that at other times, the wars and the little clusters of wars and stuff like that would show up.
Well, and my thought on that is to do a chart for China,
Uh-huh.
on China when the virus started. That would be my idea to.
That would be very interesting to see what that shows. Yeah.
Right, and then that would give a lot of influence. And in fact, I can send you a link if you want to listen to it. Lee Lehman, she's a medical astrologer, and she did a talk the other day, and I think it's about half hour, 40 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and she used the chart for Wuhan. So
Okay, that would be interesting. Yeah.
yeah, for where something starts.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
good question.
Yeah, it is. And that would be really hard to cast a chart for the whole world, the globe. Yeah.
You would have to pick one point, maybe North Pole or something like that.
Right. Something that rules everything. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions out there floating around? I see Norman came in. Is there anything you missed or you'd like to say?
Yes. You caught me off guard there, Kevin.
I'm sorry.
I'm concerned about all these young people who are insisting on having their beach weekend and so on. One young man said, nothing's going to prevent me from going to the beach and getting drunk. What a disgusting attitude. And where does this come from?
Mm. Yeah.
It's taking me to no end. I've been irritated.
But he's not alone, and he is certainly not
No.
not at all. In fact, on that same beach, there's quite a crowd of them.
Yes,
but we have them all around us. In fact, I was just talking the other day with someone who was expressing something similar, something like, I'm not going to let fear stand in my way. I'm going to go ahead. And this is a person who has been on oxygen for years.
Wow.
This is not someone who needs to take chances with a lung infection. And this is, I shake my head. I'm like, at what point do you decide you really need to take responsibility? So I'll get off my soapbox.
A lot of the young people are saying, oh, that's against our rights. We should be able to mingle where we want and stuff. On Facebook today, I'm on Camino Island, and one of my friends that lives out here, she had to go to town and do some stuff, and she was shocked. And so she put it on Facebook of all the kids that are playing at the park at Terry's Corner, and all the parents that are standing like 2 feet apart or 1 foot apart talking to each other where all the kids play. And it's like, okay, what did they not get about what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Liz, that was an insightful presentation. Gave us a lot of things to think about and gave us some ideas of where we are and what to expect in the next few months. So thanks a lot for joining us tonight. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Oracle Scroll. Any questions, comments, or anything at all can be forwarded to us at theoraclescroll@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Also, you may check kevinwalder.com for any further information on the work of your host. And we appreciate you being with us and hope you will spread the word, let your family and friends know how much fun it is to attend the Oracle Scroll. See you next time.